Disability news, disability news. It's news and views for you. It's disability news. Hello, my wonderful friends, and welcome back to another episode of Disability News. Today on Disability News, eliminating ableist and outdated words from signage in Canada, disabled people suffering life-changing injuries when boarding aircrafts, BSL, British Sign Language, gets 200 new signs to help adapt to climate change. If you have missed any of the previous episodes of Disability News, then they are linked all down below. Moving up to Canada now, to some areas that I'm probably going to very embarrassingly mispronounce. Saskatoon are going to be eliminating the word handicapped from their accessible parking spots and changing it to a more updated term with a wheelchair symbol and accessible parking. This comes after disabled athlete Tracy Johnson campaigned to get the word eliminated from accessible parking spaces in her town. She convinced councillors that this was a very outdated, unempowering word and it would be a lot more appropriate to bring it into the 21st century and have the more liberating term accessible parking instead. Now, the term handicapped is a very, very outdated word which doesn't liberate people. It means that it gives you the inability to perform tasks mentally, socially or physically within society. It's believed that it came about in the 1800s when talking about a range of disadvantages. Believe it or not, this term is believed to have come from the racetrack, where horses that were bigger, better, stronger, faster were given a disadvantage. These disadvantages were put into a cap and then people pulled them out to level the playing field. Parties agreed to the conditions of the handicap by placing hands into cap and either pulling out or leaving cash strikes. Hence the term handicap. The term handicap started to apply to disabled people in the 1900s, when society and social work started to look at placing people in society. So if life was a horse race, a disabled person couldn't compete because of the hindrance they had been given, hence a handicap. Over the decades, old words like cripple, imbecile, lame, they all became to feel a little bit more and more uncomfortable, and it was around about the 1970s that handicapped seemed the most appropriate term for someone who was disabled. Handicap could also invoke the notion of a beggar with a hand in cap asking for money or sympathy or a payout, which doesn't sit well with me as a disabled person. And it wasn't until the civil rights movement and disability activists started doing their work sort of from the 1970s, as we've seen with Crip Camp, through to the 1990s and obviously beyond, that we then decided to use the more empowering term disabled, because that is what we are. We're not handicapped, we're not beggars, we're not asking for payouts, we're not asking for sympathy. We are disabled, and that is what we are, and we don't want these elusive terms such as differently abled or handicapped to help people feel more comfortable with that word. It's for disabled people to decide what they want to use, but for non-disabled people, disabled is the word. So having learnt the history of the word handicapped, it's great to see that some cities are taking words and signage more seriously. In the UK, our parking is called disabled parking, but actually the parking's not disabled, it's accessible parking. Now, I can see problems with this and having a wheelchair symbol and accessible parking. It's great to use the word accessible, but not all disabilities require a wheelchair to be able to park in these accessible spaces. I've also seen toilets being changed from disabled toilet to accessible toilet, which is great to see, but then seeing the wheelchair symbol can be very difficult for people who have hidden disabilities. I do feel like we have just a little bit further to go, but it is great that people are starting to listen and signages are starting to change, although be it a little bit small. Rome wasn't built in a day, guys. This story comes with a little bit of a trigger warning. Some viewers may find this content a little bit distressing. Now, it is no secret that traveling as a wheelchair user comes with many, many challenges. We have to think of many different things. Are our wheelchairs going to get lost? Are they going to get damaged? American Airlines damaged 11,389 wheelchairs last year, and that's 11,389 too many, in my opinion. But it's one thing getting your wheelchair damaged, but then getting yourself damaged, that takes it to a whole new level. In 2019, Nathaniel Foster, NJ, known to his family, travelled from Houston to Louisiana. Now, NJ was a quadriplegic who used a ventilator. He lived a very fulfilled, active lifestyle. He went to university and he had his own t-shirt business. But when disembarking the aircraft at Louisiana, he suffered a catastrophic, life-changing brain injury which left him in a comatose, unresponsive state. It is believed that when he was disembarking, his breathing tube got wrapped around the aisle chair and he started to slip down as he wasn't fastened, secured in the chair, and that is when the oxygen supply got cut off. On the 7th of August 2023, an out-of-court settlement was agreed. The trial lasted over a week and the jury were dismissed before a verdict was read. Although the defendant didn't accept any responsibility, one of the flight attendants testified in court, and they said that they felt that there weren't enough staff in Louisiana to help transfer NJ safely and appropriately. The defendant accepts no responsibility, but an out-of-court settlement was agreed, which will be distributed amongst NJ's family, and this will help pay for his care. Shockingly, this is not an isolated case. When doing a little bit of research, I came across Gabby Asseline, who at the age of 25 died after complications when boarding an aircraft. As she was boarding the aircraft on the jet bridge, her power chair hit one of the joins and she was thrown from her wheelchair. She broke her neck and suffered a life-changing spinal cord injury where she was paralysed from the neck down. She was unable to breathe and unable to talk. After 11 months in hospital fighting for her life, Gabby passed away. In a lawsuit, the Asseline family alleged that Southwest did not provide the appropriate care to Gabby when she was boarding her aircraft and that they were reckless. I believe the lawsuit is ongoing. I don't know the outcome of the Asseline law case, but from what we have seen, airlines aren't properly equipped. They aren't properly trained yet. And I really hope that one day disabled people are going to be able to travel by aircraft, not worry about their wheelchairs, and certainly not worry about experiencing catastrophic injuries when boarding and disembarking. What saddens me the most is that this really could have been avoided. This could have been avoided by having appropriate staffing levels, but it also could have been avoided by making air travel more accessible to people in wheelchairs. Now, we saw in one of my previous episodes of Disability News that onboard wheelchair spaces are being developed, where power wheelchair users can roll onto the aircraft and stay in their chair where they are securely fastened. Now, if NJ had this available to him, none of this would have happened. And I just hope that by raising awareness of this, we can end this discrimination and end this horrific treatment that disabled people face when they are boarding an aircraft. Now, this story caught my eye. I have always been very interested in sign language from a very young age. I used to ride at the Riding for Disabled, and quite a lot of my fellow riders were deaf, and they let me borrow their BSL books, and I started to learn sign, and I really enjoyed it, and I feel like I pick it up quite quickly, even though I'm dyslexic. I guess it's because you're actioning something, you're doing something. So when I saw this story, I had to cover it, and it is that BSL, British Sign Language, will be getting 200 new signs in a bid to adapt to climate change. When working in classrooms and even in laboratories as scientists, before these signs were developed alongside climate change, people had to sign out every single letter. But now there are signs for these new terms such as carbon footprint, biodiversity, density, ecosystem pollution, and more. These signs were developed by sign specialists and deaf scientists, and it is hoped that people involved in climate change, science and in the classroom can participate more and fully within conversations around climate change. Dr. Audrey Cameron, who is profoundly deaf and leads the sign language project at Edinburgh University, said that the lack of vocabulary actually left her excluded from very important meetings. When describing the process of coming up with these signs, they take a look at the school curriculum and work to develop accurate but visual meaning behind the words. As hearing people, we are constantly learning and picking up new words and vocabulary, but with deaf and hard of hearing children, they are being left behind. And this is why it's really important to develop these signs to help the classroom be more inclusive and equal to everybody. Quite a lot of teachers and children were stating that being able to sign out what the actual action of, say, photosynthesis is, for example, it really helps them remember the whole meaning behind it rather than spelling it out individually, which is extremely boring and laborious. But when you actually have the sign for photosynthesis, which is probably wrong, but you have your leaf and then you have the sun rays where the leaf is absorbing the energy from the sun, it's a whole action that you can visually memorize when you're taking exams. I'm so happy to see that classrooms are becoming more inclusive to people who are deaf or hard of hearing, and I really hope that it will inspire the younger generation to help tackle the issues that we are facing with our planet today. That is it for August's disability news. I hope that you have found it interesting. If you have, please consider giving me a super thanks. If you can't do that, make sure to like, subscribe for more, and maybe watch some more videos after this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Bye! Someone enjoyed my video.